Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Set 12 is coming out. It is out. The pre-releases are done. We're playing set 12, so I thought I'd make a quick general breakdown to all of the 6 new leaders, a price point guide, and just give you some expectations for playing the deck, how good it is on a general scale, the general theme and gameplay strategy for the deck. Obviously, we'll be going into more of a breakdown for individual decks and their respective deck profiles, videos on the channel. But this is a beginner's guide if you are someone looking to play the One Piece TCG, looking to play one of the new set 12 leaders. I thought I would do this to try and make it as easy as possible. I'll have timestamps in the description if you want to go to a specific leader, or at the end where we kind of sum up everything. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and if you're going to be buying any new set 12 cards on TCG Player, I've got a TCG Player affiliate link down in the description. I've also got a coupon code for Nengarn. If you want some dope playmats, you can use my code StrawHatPecan for 5% off on top of any of their sales they're running. Some nice stuff out there. Well, let's get into it. Here are our 6 leaders. Getting into it, we've got Rayleigh, the red leader, 5k power, 5 life, former Roger Pirates type. Under the rules, you can't have cards with a cost of 5 or more in the deck. Also, we have activate main, reveal 2 events from your hand up to one of your characters with a 4k base power, gains 2k power during this turn. Rayleigh is just red aggression, but with a lot of math behind it. Getting that most optimal play in a turn requires a lot of thinking and strategy. The deck has a lot of searchers and a lot of potential to go very wide and very aggressive while also swinging pretty high. And here's the alt art leader. We've got Zoro. Pretty much a fan favorite, right? Who doesn't love Zoro? Green, 5 life, 5k power, Supernova and Straw Hat Crew typing, Dawn ×3, activate the main. If this leader battles one of your opponent's characters during this turn, set this leader as active, then your leader can't attack your opponent's characters with a base cost of 7 or less during this turn. So you get to pressure your opponent's board by swinging into their characters, while also swinging at their life or any big cards they might have played out. Zoro is a lot of cards that rest your opponent's board, so that way you can do the leader ability, right? And he is a very strong, albeit pretty expensive leader to pick up for the set because he's really good. It's Zoro, and honestly, the deck is pretty straightforward. It's about finding your pieces you need to properly sequence your opponent by resting whatever they played out, swinging at it, swinging at their face, and going in for game later with some nasty events. And there's the alt art leader. We've got Kuzan, blue, 5 life, 5k power, navy typing, obviously, right? When a card is trashed from your hand due to your navy card type's effect, draw cards equal to the number of cards that were trashed. So obviously we have a lot of cards in the deck that trash things to get off bonus effects, right? We have a lot of cycle in the deck because of that, making Kuzan very consistent. You're pretty much always going to find the pieces you want to find in Kuzan. However, they're not the strongest, right? Kuzan is a deck that can put out a lot of bodies with an 8-cost Garp, we'll see later, that cheats out another navy body, right? But at the end of the day, it's a lot of card draw, but not a lot of crazy, flashy things happening on the board. Very fun though, and pretty straightforward getting into it. Also a very cheap deck, I will say. And there's the alt art leader. We got Sanji, blue and purple, 4 life, 5k power, Straw Hat Crew type, and also Vin Smoke family. We got a first effect of activate main once per turn, Dawn -1, activate one Straw Hat Crew type event with a base cost of 3 or less. And then also when attacking, if the number of Dawn on your field is equal or less to the number on your opponent's field, add 1 Dawn card and rest it. So basically getting that Dawn back from using your leader ability. So obviously with that, there's a ton of events that help you draw cards, remove some of your opponent's board, defend your life, and a lot of shenanigans with that. And then of course you kind of negate that downside of Dawn -1 with your leader ability, right? There are a few key pieces in the deck that revolve around events being in your trash. So the more you cycle through all those events in your deck, the stronger those cards become. And we'll get into that with all the example deck lists we have. And then we have the beautiful alt art leader. Honestly, I really like all of them in this set. Then we got Rosinante, purple and yellow, 4 life, 5k power with the Navy/Don Quixote Pirates typing. Once per turn, if your law would be removed, you may add 1 card from the top of your life to your hand instead. Activate main once per turn, Dawn -1. The next time you play a law with a base cost of 4 or more, over the cost of 4 or more, from your hand during this turn, the cost will be reduced by 2. So you get to play more law quicker. So you can either go wider with your board or a little bit higher, playing out a little bit bigger of a character a little earlier, right? And then you get to protect that board as well. I will say, out of all the leaders, personally, and from what I've seen, Rosinante feels like a weaker link in terms of the leaders. I will say you could probably take any of these to locals and have a decent time. Probably win with most of them. I will say Rosinante is a little bit harder to do that with. He's not the strongest, but definitely fan favorite if you are a fan of either Rosinante or Law, right? Because that is primarily what the deck consists of, with these 2 leader abilities working primarily around it, right? We have 2 boss monsters in the deck, both 7 cost, so it makes it so you can play them for even less Dawn, meaning that you can get them out a little bit earlier, which can maybe get the jump on your opponent. And then we have the alt art leader here. So that leaves us to our last leader, Koala, black and yellow, 4 life, 5k power, with the Dressrosa and Rebo army typing. When this leader battles your opponent's leader, and you have a 2 or more characters with the cost of 8 or more, draw 1 card, specifically only attacking the leader, right? And then once per turn, this effect may be activated when your opponent either plays a card with a base cost of 7 or more, or plays a character card off of another card's effect, right? Another character card's effect. So, for example, there's a Rayleigh card, a Luffy, that can play out another body off of that Luffy. That would be an example of your opponent having to take a life from that. So Koala is going to punish your opponent by from playing the game for the most part, right? And then playing a lot of cards that trash cards from your opponent's hand, or some heal, some little bit of removal, right? I will say Koala has some potential. I think there's some stuff more to figure out with this leader particularly, at least for me personally. But overall, a lot of making your opponent take life and then trashing cards from their hand, punishing them even more, all the while playing out your own big bodies and healing a little bit along the way. And that is the alt art leader for Koala. So those are our 6 leaders. Let's get into some example deck profiles, and I'll go over where I got them from to give you a little bit of a background from it, right? So we'll go over general gameplay strategy, what the deck wants to do to win, how hard that is to do for a newer player, price, obviously, because some of these cards are a little bit pricey, and then at the end we'll do a little bit of a sum up. So Rosinante, like we said, he is cheating out laws, right, with a little bit of protection built in. So we have our boss monsters, the 7 cost laws. This one buffs your entire board by 1k until the end of your opponent's next turn. So it's really great to play out quite a few of these laws early game. This one's a really nice one. That 4/6 stat line is really good. A blocker, right? Also ramps you back, so that kind of negates that downside, right? You can always Dawn minus a rested Dawn 2 for this ability and any ability in the game, right? So you can always play out 1 law and then use your ability to minus cost for the next law you play out, going as wide as you can, and then finishing off by playing one of these to buff your entire board and getting some decent 6-7k swings across the board to pressure your opponent's hand. We also have this law that heals another supernova to your life that can add some defense, right? If you have to use your leader ability to protect some of your board. We have this nice 6/7 blocker law, but like I said, a bit of a downside to this is that you just have to run law. That's like pretty much everything in your deck is law, right? And some hard pirate stuff. This Beppo is a very nice 2k counter option whenever a Dawn is returned from your field to your Dawn deck. One of your leader characters gets plus 1k for the turn, you know, allowing for a little bit higher swings because you're pretty much always going to be using the Dawn minus effect. Yeah, again, it's not hard to do as a concept. The deck isn't crazy difficult. Sequencing out your turn properly to get the most value of your Dawn, obviously that's something with every deck. However, you know, when you're dealing with Dawn management of putting Dawn back to try and get some more value, you know. But at the end of the day, it's just not the strongest. So unfortunately, yeah. Hopefully down the line, we do get some more law cards, because again, that is primarily what the deck is, right? That will buff it a little bit. We do have some nice events, right? That can be a little bit tricky to help us defend ourselves. We got some unblockable, again, trying to just go wide and a little tall, faster than our opponent can. There's just some decks in the meta right now that do it a little bit better, right? But this does have some potential, I will say. This law buffing an entire board. We've had cards like do that in the past. Never were that crazy, but I don't know. I think I see some potential. It's just not a crazy deck right now. And also, not only is it not the strongest, unfortunately, it is pretty expensive. Now, looking at this price, $378, that should not be what it is. It should not be like it be. However, this law is, yeah, obviously the culprit of that price. You might be thinking, why is it so expensive? This law is a promo. This promo specifically, I think it's printed in Premium Booster 2, which we're getting in early October. Also, I think it comes from regional participation packs and winter packs and all that stuff, which is happening now. So I think that batch of regionals where this card is coming from is happening now. So these are it's the first time we're seeing this card. This card is used in a few decks like Yellow Kid, Rosinante, obviously, and it's a 4 of. So the fact that it's very hard to get right now being from regionals, that's why it's very pricey. If we wait till this comes out in Premium Booster 2, the deck is going to be a lot cheaper. However, it'll still be decently expensive because we're running a secret rare from set 10. That's always been a little bit because it's used as a, like, I think a 4 of or a 3 of in Green Yellow Law and Yellow Kid, which are decently popular, kind of strong decks. Not crazy as much, but still pretty decent. So the card is going to be at least a little bit, right? So you're always probably going to be looking to spend 60 to 80 bucks, depending on how much this is and how, you know, how easy you can get some of these rares or SRs or uncommons, right? This comes from a starter deck. You know, we've got just, I think this was from this set. No, I don't know. This is like a common, right? Uncommon, I guess. Not crazy except for the secret rare and this promo. So price wise, it's not helping it. Not helping the fact that it's a weaker deck. Again, you could still probably take this to locals and have a good time, win a few matches, probably even win locals, right? Even a store, you know, event, maybe like a 5-round. I wouldn't expect this to do crazy in a regional. Love to be proved wrong with everything I say, right? But would definitely temper my expectations if I was going to play this deck. However, for a beginner standpoint, overall the deck isn't superly complicated, right? Because just looking at the laws, we have Searcher, we have blockers, that trash card from your opponent's hand, right? A heal, a buff your whole board, right? Nothing's so superly overly complicated, so that does help out the deck, right? But again, there are probably substitutes for this. However, not really. You really want this card, but it's a thing we'll have to wait for, because please do not spend $300 on this card. Please do not do that. Please don't get a playset for $300. It'll go down, I promise. But getting into it, this is where the list comes from. Gum.gg. I have most of these lists from One Piece top decks, which talk about where the deck came from. However, with the fact that Rosinante was a weaker leader, there wasn't a lot on the list. So this is the list that I found. Next, we've got Zoro on the other end of the spectrum. In terms of meta, this is one of the top decks for the set. Definitely a deck that a lot of people want to play. It's very good. It's very straightforward. It's simple. You're just resting your opponent's board, swinging into it, then swinging into their life. It's not that complicated, I promise you. There's a few searchers that help you find your slash cards and green events. We have things. This gets replaced, I believe, by a card we have. This is a list from the East. All these, I should say, are lists from before the ban list. I'll talk about a little bit. I don't think that Rosinante gets any cards other than the law from Premium Booster 2. There are new cards in Premium Booster 2. I think some lists might run some of the new ones, but I don't think Zoro or Rosinante run any of the new cards. I'm not sure, but this is a promo, but I think there's options that are just commons that would replace this. So not really worrying about this, about the price, but yeah. Just doing things like Dashigi to rest what your opponent played out, to swing into it and then swing at their life. Mihawk to just restand a bunch of Don, you know. We have Hody to rest your opponent's board. This was a lot of times used against blue-purple Luffy to rest that Don and blockers, right? So I don't know how much Hody's getting played in like newer lists. I think with blue-purple kind of nerfed, we don't need it maybe as much. I don't know. I didn't really put too much time practicing into Zoro. However, from looking at a lot of the lists, I know a lot of them did run the card for blue-purple, and just in general, it's a really good green card. But the gameplay strategy remains the same. You have a lot of things, minus from this list, but a lot of them do use it, is the 4-cost Kuina that rests a 4 or less, and then attaches 3 Don to your leader. So just more things that rest whatever your opponent played out. You swing at it, then swing at their life, right? And then we finish off games with this event that just restands your leader. You can swing 12k at your opponent for game and then restand to do it again. If they block out, you get a 3rd swing. It's kind of crazy, right? Very strong leader. Again, pretty straightforward. It's just about finding your pieces. Getting into price though, very expensive. Even if we're not running Hody anymore, the main culprit is Cavendish and Tashigi, which are going to be going down in price once Premium Booster 2 hits. However, because this leader is very good and a lot of people want to play it, people have been spiking up the price of Cavendish. This card has been going crazy because, I mean, people want to play it right now. People don't have tournaments coming up. They don't want to wait until October to play it once this gets reprinted. However, if you're somebody who is newer, yes, Zoro is a pretty straightforward deck. It's really good. Definitely would recommend it once these prices go down, because they will go down once they get reprinted, right? If you're not familiar with what Premium Booster 2 is, it's a reprint set, and I think an SR is guaranteed in like every pack. It might have changed in the second iteration, but there'll be a lot of these on the market, right? Especially as well as with Tashigi, right? Both of these SRs are going to be reprinted, but until then, the prices are going to be kind of crazy for those people that want to play this deck in tournaments before that happens. So once these go down in price with that set, again, I believe in October, the price point will go down. It'll probably even out as not that crazy for a meta deck. You know, if we're talking about like top tier meta deck, be around like $100, $150. That's, you know, back in like OP12 days, it was all over $400. It was kind of crazy. You know, it'll be a lot less expensive. You know, we have a lot of newer cards that are just commons and rares and uncommons that we use, you know, so things that aren't that crazy. This Mihawk SR is really like the new card that's expensive, right? These are like $11 each. This came out in this set. It's new, so there's still going to be a lot that gets opened up. However, because it's for Zoro, right, this has become the most expensive of the SRs. Definitely if you're a beginner and you want to get a strong deck, this is a good choice. But once the price goes down, that's when I would recommend it. And this list particularly comes from a 9 and 2 top 8 placement. I wanted to highlight this one because it had Hody Jones. If we take out Hody Jones, the price would go down a little bit, but I think all the lists that I saw hover around that $300 to like $350-ish mark. So if you're looking to pick this up from scratch right now, you're looking at least $300. And like I said, in a month, this will be a lot cheaper. Getting into it, we've got Kuzan. Like I said, Kuzan has a lot of draw power, right? We have a lot of things that trash cards from your hand. That becomes cycle for Kuzan, right? Our main body is this Garb that trashes something to play out another blue navy, right? So essentially, once you get to 8 Don, you're playing out Garp into something else like Sakazuki or Kuzan. That, you know, playing out 2 decently sized bodies is a very strong combo, right? Playing out 2 7 costs or like an 8 cost and 7 cost. 2 8 costs. Some lists run the Aramaki, the 8 cost blocker. This one that I picked did not. It is pretty strong, right? And again, with how consistent Kuzan is, you can pretty much always rely on finding this Garp into something else by the time you hit 8 Don, right? And we also have things like Cavendish that give us even more draw and cycle, right? But overall, there are stronger decks out there. But if you are looking to pick up a pretty decent deck and one that would do probably pretty good at locals, and I will say, going along with the consistency aspect, I think that would probably be a really rewarding feeling, right? I think we can all, if you've played card games before, even before One Piece, you know, drawing into your first 5 cards, seeing that it's not the best can be a little bit of a downer, right? But with Kuzan, any starting hand can kind of morph into whatever you need it to be throughout the game. So definitely there is skills in the deck, right? With morphing your hand into what you need it to be. That is a big thing to think about when you're playing Kuzan. But overall, you're just playing out big body into another big body and drawing a ton of cards along the way to kind of keep you alive. We have really strong events like this counter event that both goes plus 4,000 for 1 Don, but essentially cycles our hand as well. We've got some removal in the deck with the Gum Gum Red Rock and the Gravity Blade. So you got some classic blue stuff. This is like the epitome of blue decks in my opinion. We've got some removal and just a ton of card draw. We've got the pudding in there to disrupt your opponent's hand size, you know. And I can't emphasize enough, $40 for a deck that you could probably do pretty well at locals or a store event with, even a regionals. You know, there was, when I was looking, quite a decent handful of lists that had some pretty good placements, right? And again, this is before the ban list. They were finding these lists and these results. So post ban list for our set 12, who knows? Maybe he's even better. I don't know. There's still a lot of time for people to test and the tournaments are upcoming, right? But it's $40. Like, this is less than $40 for a deck that is really consistent and decent, right? That's pretty good, right? Just spending anything less than $50 to get into the game. Like, that's the price of buying like a couple of starter decks and just morphing them together at that point. And you're getting an actual crafted deck that is pretty decent, right? That's not a bad deal. So I like highlighting. I like that the fact that there's a lot of decks now that are pretty cheap, right? But yeah, this is the list we got. This was a 7-2, which is pretty good. You know, 7 wins, 2 losses, not bad. In an 800 player tournament, it looks like. Next, we got Rayleigh. I will say, Rayleigh, I think personally, is one of the harder leaders to master and to get the most value out of. Because, as you can see, we have a lot of low-cost characters. Not even besides the fact that, you know, you can't have more than a 4-cost in the deck, right? But Rayleigh is a deck that plays a lot of searchers. These little 2k powers actually become swings with his leader ability and other shenanigans you can do, right? The star of the show, this Luffy that cheats out another body and also gives 1 rested Don to one of your leader characters. This being played on 4 Don can essentially give you 2 5k swings with any search you played out and then your leader, right? That is, you know, there's a lot of efficiency with how you maneuver your swings, right? Red is very aggressive, very rush. This deck particularly, you are trying to maximize how many characters you can put out on the board and how high you can swing those, right? Well, that's pretty much any deck, right? For the most part. But specifically for how this aggro goes, you're looking to play Luffy into something else and just get the maximum swings you can get, right? Trying to swing as high as you can with these characters. We have things like Armament Hockey that buff your leader by attaching a Don to it and then giving 1k power to one of your leader characters, right? So it's all about playing these searchers that pick up something else. So when you play this card out, you find something else that goes to your hand size remains the same, and then boom, you can turn this 1-cost character into a swing, you know, pressuring your opponent. And finding the sweet spot and finding all of your pieces and doing everything in the correct sequences can be quite tricky. And because you are restricted to very low cost characters, you know, you have to know very much ahead of time. How are you going to swing, right? What order? Because there's a lot that goes into your swing sequencing, right? We have things like Boa Hancock that trashes herself to attach Two Rested Dawn to one of your leader characters. Stuff like that. Just a lot of things going into the sequencing of this deck. So it can be a little bit complicated for somebody just getting into the game, I would say. However, there's a lot of fundamentals that go into this deck. Just knowing what numbers to swing with your characters in what order, right? That is very fundamental to the game of One Piece. Knowing, okay, I swing this number, my opponent has this many in hand. How many cards do they have to give to counter out of the swing? What do I get in return with that knowledge, you know? So playing this deck and getting that down, I think would be quite rewarding. Let's see. I know this deck, yeah, 160 bucks. So yeah, we do have 2 new SRs from the set. They're not the craziest, right? This is a 4 of and this is a 4 of, so 15 bucks, like less than 10 bucks for a playset of new SRs. It's not crazy. Like we just saw that Mihawk, one of them alone was 10 bucks, right? But we have things like Kid Killer. This isn't getting reprinted in EBO2, so people shot up the price, right? Very unfortunate. This comes out of a starter deck. It's like a premium starter deck, so it's a little bit more expensive. I think this, yeah, it's just unfortunate, right? Kind of need things like these events. Other than that, though, you're looking at very cheap cards, commons. This Nami's been reprinted like a ton of times, so honestly, maybe there are some cheaper versions that you can find online other than the TCG player, but who knows? And also make sure with this and anything, like if you are going to locals or plan to go to locals, you know, ask around, ask if people got trades, ask if people have extras of stuff. You know, I personally have like a few playsets of this Nami because it's been reprinted in other starter decks and stuff like that. So ask around, definitely, for sure. This Buggy has gone up in price because of Rayleigh. It's just an uncommon, right, from OP12, which is kind of crazy. But overall, this deck, I will say, set 13 has a lot of power creep, the set after this, obviously. But I have seen a lot of Rayleigh being played in set 13, so you might get like a little bit of longevity with the deck, which is nice. Which you can't say about every leader. But yeah, it is a very numbers-heavy aggro deck. And this is from the finals in Japan, 10-0, the winner, right? The winner of the finals. I'm not saying that this, Rayleigh's the best leader or anything like that. There's definitely some stuff that counters this leader, but it's a very good deck. It's very rewarding when you put in a lot of time to learn it. And yeah, the placements show. This is, like I said, when Blue Purple Luffy was around, and I think this deck particularly did well into Blue Purple Luffy. However, even past that, from a lot of my play and seeing a lot of talk, a lot of people still hold this deck very high regards, right? Zoro and Rayleigh definitely still up there as good meta contenders in set 12. So yeah, definitely a strong deck to pick up. One of the stronger out of set 12. And price point is, it is pricey. 160 bucks is a lot if you're picking this up from scratch. But for a meta contending deck, right, one that you can take to regionals and do well with, it's not the most outlandish price that I've seen for a deck list, right? Next we've got Sanji. So, like I said, we run a ton of events. Those do some pretty nice things. We'd hope so, right? A lot of them is searching, draw. There is some stuff that bottom decks 4 cost, bounces 4 costs, right? We've got Jozu in this list that bounces 6 costs. So you're doing a lot of searching in this deck and finding your pieces, right? While trying to remove some of your opponent's early game tempo, and then finishing it off with this key piece here, this Sanji, this 3/5. Because neither of these effects say once per turn or your turn or opponent's turn, like this is just as many times as you want with its secondary effect. This character gets plus 1k power for every 5 events in the trash. But the one I was talking about is this. If this character would be removed from the field by your opponent's effect, you can return 1 Dawn from your field to your Dawn deck. So going down 1 Dawn to save a character is not bad, especially when, you know, he is one of your key pieces. He can easily become a 7-8k swing. I've seen it go up to 10 in extreme cases, right? So a very hard to remove body that you can play out early, that can get buffed very high. It is kind of crazy to think that like the deck revolves around like one body for the most part. However, this list doesn't run the 4-cost Reiju SR that comes out with the set 2. I've seen a lot of lists run as like a 2 of or more sometimes. But yeah, just focusing on this one body is a little crazy. But yeah, it's like you get a lot of card draw from your events. So you can pretty much always rely on finding your pieces, right? You're going to essentially just be using just a ton of events in the early game to keep a very good hand size, to find key pieces, and to try to remove some of your opponent's board early, all while keeping this guy on the board, let him grow stronger, right? And you have access to Gum Gum Giant, which is one of the craziest counter events in the game. I'll say that. We've got a little bit of removal. I've seen a lot of lists run the Red Rock, right? Again, one of our strongest buys we play out is 3 Dawn. And depending on the matchup, you can kind of just put him out on the field and just let him sit there, right? So we've got some decent removal with this. And yeah, pretty cheap deck, under 30 bucks. Like I said, this one list particularly, I picked because I think it did very well in a regional, and also doesn't run the Reiju SR either, which is very strong too. I think you could definitely fit in a couple of copies. And it wouldn't even break the bank. The Reiju SR is fairly cheap. If you added a couple of copies, it would just put the deck up to like 30 bucks. So overall, it's not overly complicated, but like, what did I say with everything? The sequencing is very important. I guess that's the general tip of today. Sequencing is very important, right? But particularly with the fact that you Dawn minus to play out the event, and then you get that Dawn back by attacking, you know, you have to know what events you're going to play out in what order. You have to use your first leader ability first and then swing to get that back, right? To properly get the most value from your turn. You know, you have to know what events to be looking for because you're going to be drawing a lot. You're going to be searching a lot. You need to know what you need for that particular time in the matchup, right? You know, we don't run a lot of character cards, so it's not like a ton of counter in the deck, right? So you're relying a lot on events to kind of save your butt when you're countering out, right? We do have a lot of strong ones. I've even seen some people run the 5-drop Rosinante, right? That restands Dawn at the end of turn. Pretty good card. Yeah, things like this that counter for 4,000 for 1 Dawn. Gum Gum Giant, like I said, extremely strong. But yeah, the deck revolves around just playing a ton of events, filtering through your deck, buffing up this Sanji, and removing a little bit of your opponent's board. Nothing crazy, right? We have some early game removal with like 4 costs. Josie removes, bounces back to 6 costs, and then we can Red Rock to get rid of any big body. And just trying to finish off the game with this guy for the most part. So, not a bad deck to get into the game with, I would say. It's not overly complicated. There is a decent amount of thought that goes into it. The gameplay strategy is pretty straightforward, though, just using events to buff up your Sanji, swinging in. You know, if you're definitely a fan of Sanji, this is a much better deck than I think the last Sanji leader was like OP12, OP13 or something like that. Right, so definitely not like if Zoro and Rayleigh are tier 1, maybe Sanji's like tier 1.5, something like that. Could be better. But yeah, definitely not bad for the price point, especially, right? Less than 30 bucks. Even if you put in the other new Reiju SR, you're still looking under like 35, under 40 for sure. So pretty decent. And this is the list where it comes from. Again, a regional 7-2, placing 19th, pretty good. And then getting into our last leader, Koala. Like I said, this leader punishes your opponent for playing out big bodies or cheating out bodies. And then we have a lot of things that trash cards from your opponent's hand to punish them even more so, right? With Karasu or Robin, this card is very good, right? And then the star of the show is this dragon that can play a 6 cost or less from our trash, right? So a lot of our searchers, like this Koala or this event, search and then put other cards in the trash, you know, and then you counter out throughout the game and things end up in your trash, and then boom, they can end up back on the board, right? So this dragon can play out a 6 cost. This list, and like I talked about earlier, Koala has a lot of, I think, potential with the new deck building, especially with the ban list out. But I just want to highlight this because there are some key pieces, right? This dragon, I think, using most lists, right? An 8 cost that can cheat out a 6 cost from the trash is pretty good value, right? Being able to play out the Robin off of that, it's very nice. This trash is 2 cards from opponent hand if they have 5 or more, which if your opponent has 5 cards in hand, if they have to trash 2, that is a big choice for them to have to make, right? That is very detrimental to them. Or you have things like Kuma, which can heal us, right? We are a little bit more fragile being 4 life leader. However, with how much variance can be in the list, I did want to highlight this. That price point over $200 is a lot for a leader that isn't really meta. Like, I think Koala personally has a lot of potential, but it is not going crazy and beating a ton of Zoro and Rayleigh right now. And even if we don't run things like Katakuri, which isn't in every list, there's a ton of different variation. I just want to highlight this particularly because Kuma is pretty much in a lot of lists, right? This card was made for the deck, obviously, right? And it is a very expensive secret rare right now. A lot of yellow decks are running this as a 4 of, so you know, it's unfortunate, right? If Koala is like a tier 2, tier 1.5 or whatever deck, you know, spending that much money for it, it kind of hurts. Again, if you're newer to the game, the deck isn't crazy complicated, right? You were just playing things to, you know, punish your opponent. Like, your opponent kind of gets punished by your leader ability without you even doing anything for the most part, right? And then you can punish them by making them trash cards from their hands, which makes, you know, kind of going for game and mathing out your opponent's hand size a little bit easier. We have things like Zeus for removal. There are some other lists that run more removal, stuff like that. We've got some really strong blockers, right? Rebecca gets a lot of value. Hack gets a lot of value. KO on KO, you know, popping a 4 cost, pretty nice against aggro decks. Overall, like I said, Koala isn't the strongest of the leaders. There was a lot of hype when she was first revealed, with the leader ability being kind of crazy. So that's why I say I think there could be some more potential, maybe especially with the bans. But as it states right now, I think regardless of what list you pick, you know, the gameplay strategy kind of remains the same. Either you are punishing your opponents through your leader ability by them having to take life, and then either trying to remove their board with some cost reduction and KO stuff with like black, you know, or trashing cards from their hand to punch them even further with that, right? And then you have the yellow side is just pretty much just the Kuma. But it's a very strong card. To heal for only 6 Dawn is pretty new in the game. So it's a very strong card. It has counter too, so you can counter out with it and then play it back off of Dragon if they KO it or swing into it, right? And like, you get to heal again. But yeah, regardless of what list you run, I think Kuma is going to be there in some regard and is very expensive right now, so be wary of that. This is the list that I found. From it is a 5-0. There wasn't a ton of showings for Koala. Like I said, it wasn't the strongest leader. Hopefully with the ban list, maybe it gets to show a little bit more. But if you're looking forward to playing Koala, it's going to be a little bit pricey, unfortunately. I'm sorry. There's not really a good replacement for Kuma. I try my best to think of better replacements for this card, for cards that are like very expensive. But it's a secret rare, and it's very played. It's very played. In, like I said, in like every yellow deck, pretty much. It's just the unfortunateness of it. But yeah, let's go over and recap all the leaders. Hopefully these were decent general breakdowns to give you a vibe of the leaders, what they want to do, and how much you're going to be paying over if you want to buy these from scratch. So yeah, it's not really like a tier list, but just to like visually show, I guess you could say Rayleigh's like cheaper, but not by much. It's still expensive. I'm not saying that it's not expensive. It's 160 bucks. That is pretty expensive, but like compared to Zoro, it's a little bit cheaper, right? It's still expensive, so I guess we can put that there. You know, Zoro, strong, but very expensive, right? Rest thing, swing a thing, swing at face. Rayleigh, strong, a little bit cheaper, still around 150 bucks, 160 bucks. Play out cards, buff them up as much as you can. Swing with your little guys, you know, hit them with some rush. Koala, pretty alright, you know, but expensive. Make your opponent take life to their hand, trash their hand, remove their board maybe sometimes. Still like 200 bucks, kind of crazy. Decent, you know, we got Sanji and Kuzan. Play a lot of events, cycle through hand, find your pieces, play your pieces get buffed up because of your events. Non-stop events. Always find the things you want to find because your deck is just pieces that help you find more pieces, right? Never die because of Gum Gum Giant being really strong. Kuzan, same thing. Find your pieces because everything helps you just dig more into your deck and find the things that help you win, like Garp into another big body. It's always pretty good, right? And again, these are both under 40 bucks, which is kind of crazy, and then just sadly just not that good in my opinion. And from what I've seen, Rosinante just is not it right now. The deck is very expensive. It's not really getting rid of the Secret or Law. There are, you know, alternatives you could be running for the promo Law at the very beginning. Probably not that great though, off the top of head. But just wait a little bit and you'll be able to play the deck for a lot cheaper if you want to play the deck. Yeah, and again, hopefully maybe down the line, I know it's very far to think, but I think set 14 is 7 Warlords. Maybe we get some, something, I don't know, for it. That could be good. Who knows? But yeah, hopefully those were decently brief and concise explanations of what the decks want to do to win, how easy it is to do that, especially as a newer player, and how expensive it's going to be to play that. Let me know if this was helpful at all. I've wanted to make videos like this for a bit for the new sets. Set 12 is one that I really like. It's got leaders that I think are really fun and some decent ones that aren't like crazy breaking the bank, and potential with the reprint set coming out in the middle of this to make them even cheaper. So like I said, if you're looking to play these decks, maybe give it a couple weeks or like a month, right? A little bit more than a month, and you'll be able to get it for even cheaper. You know, but yeah, let me know if this was helpful. Hopefully it was. I tried to keep things on track and concise, but you know, with enough information that you kind of understand where I'm coming from with my thoughts, and that none of these lists were mine, but I tried to show and highlight some of the ones that performed well, right? To show the best of what these lists and these leaders have been able to do. And again, taking everything with a little bit of a grain of salt, because ban lists changing everything for us for the most part. Like none of these decks really got hit, right? You know, it was a pretty, in my opinion, pretty fair ban list. Kind of targeted the things that they wanted to target, and there wasn't really some strays being caught, right? Overall, I don't know. I'm hopeful for set 12 to be fun and enjoyable and a decent one for people to get into, because set 13 is very hype. So if you're looking to get in the game before that, definitely some leaders to check out. I would say overall, my rankings on like leaders to check out if you are a newer player. I think Sanji and Kuzan, just for the fact that the price point is very cheap and the decks are pretty decent, I would say these are pretty good starting points, right? They're consistent. They do what they want to do because they are consistent, and they are cheap, right? So it's not hard to get the decks to do what you want them to do, because you can always find your pieces with how much draw power there is thanks to blue, right? They are cheap. They're not the best, but you can still go to your locals and win a few games, and that's fun. That's fun. We all like winning, you know? So overall, for right now. But then again, when Premium Booster 2 comes out and Zoro, we'll see what he goes down to in price point, right? Being such a strong leader and pretty straightforward and, you know, simple, definitely will be a good pickup once that hits. But yeah, let me know what do you think down in the comments. Also, shout out to Cardi Kazoku for the deck builder, right? And then One Piece top decks for the list. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What leader are you looking forward to playing in set 12? And if you are not a newer player, what was the first leader that got you into the game? Let me know down in the comments as well. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Hopefully this was informative, right? But yeah, leave a like, subscribe, and hope to see you in our next one. Bye-bye.